Hello friends. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite classic novels, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. Let's dive into it. Here's a summary of the book. The novel opens with a description of Gateshead Hall, where our young protagonist Jane is treated like a servant by her aunt and cousins. She has no one who cares for her, and she grows up lonely and yearning for love and affection. When Jane is sent to the harsh and uncaring Lowood school, she suffers from terrible conditions and the loss of those she loves. Despite these hardships, she perseveres and eventually becomes a teacher at the school. After some time, she takes a job as a governess at Thornfield Hall, and it is there that she meets the brooding and mysterious Mr. Rochester. They fall in love despite their differences, and he proposes to her. However, on the night before their wedding, Jane hears strange noises coming from the attic of Thornfield, and she soon discovers that Mr. Rochester has a secret that he has been hiding from her. He is already married to a woman named Brontë Mason who lives in the attic, unable to live a life of secrecy and deception. Jane leaves Thornfield and finds work at a nearby parsonage, where she falls in love with a man named St. John Rivers. He asks her to marry him so they can go to India as missionaries, but she refuses because she cannot give him the love and devotion that he demands. Soon after, Jane is reunited with Mr. Rochester, who is now blind and has lost an entire side of his face, due to a fire that was started by Brontë, who burnt down Thornfield and died in the process. Despite his disfigurement, Jane still loves him and agrees to become his wife. She nurses him back to health, and they eventually leave England to live at Ferndean Manor, where Jane finds happiness and peace at last. Now let's talk about the main characters of the novel. Jane Eyre, the protagonist of the story, is a young woman who was born into a wealthy family but was forced to live a life of poverty and hardship, despite the many challenges she faces throughout the course of the novel. Jane never loses her sense of hope and determination. She is a strong-willed and independent woman who refuses to be taken advantage of by those around her. As the novel progresses, Jane matures and grows in confidence, and she eventually finds happiness and fulfillment in her relationship with Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rochester is the brooding and enigmatic love interest of the novel. He is a Byronic hero, which means that he is a character who is characterized by his dark and mysterious qualities. Mr. Rochester is a wealthy landowner who lives at Thornfield Hall, and he hires Jane as a governess for his young ward, Adele. Despite his rough exterior, Mr. Rochester is actually a kind and generous man who is deeply passionate about those he cares for. He falls in love with Jane and proposes to her, but he is unable to marry her because he has a secret wife named Brontë Mason who lives in the attic of Thornfield. Throughout the course of the novel, Mr. Rochester undergoes a significant transformation as he comes to terms with his past and learns to appreciate the importance of love and family. Brontë Mason is the mysterious and tragic wife of Mr. Rochester, who is locked away in the attic of Thornfield Hall. She is a symbol of the constraints and limitations placed on women during the Victorian era, and her character serves to highlight the hypocrisy and double standards of society. Brontë is a passionate and fiery woman who is not able to conform to the expectations of her husband and society, and her behavior is seen as mad and dangerous. However, it is later revealed that Brontë behavior is a result of the abuse and neglect she has suffered at the hands of her husband, and her confinement to the attic has driven her to the brink of insanity. Adele is the young ward of Mr. Rochester, who is cared for by Jane while she is at Thornfield Hall. She is a sweet and innocent child who represents the purity and beauty of youth. Adele is half black and half white, and her mixed-race heritage makes her an outcast in Victorian England, where racism and prejudice are widespread. Adele is a reminder of the injustices and inequalities of the time period, and her character also serves to highlight the theme of compassion and empathy in the novel. Let's move on to the major themes of the novel. One of the major themes of Jane Eyre is the search for identity. Jane is an orphan who has been raised by a family who does not want her, and she spends much of the novel searching for her place in the world. She is a strong-willed and independent woman who refuses to be taken advantage of by those around her, and as the novel progresses, she matures and grows in confidence, and she eventually finds happiness and fulfillment in her relationship with Mr. Rochester. Another important theme is the power of love. Love is a powerful force that has the ability to overcome even the greatest obstacles. Jane and Mr. Rochester's love for each other is a driving force in the novel, and it is ultimately what leads them to happiness and fulfillment. Despite the many challenges they face, including Mr. Rochester's secret marriage to Brontë Mason, Jane and Mr. Rochester's love for each other remains strong, and it ultimately triumphs over adversity. Then we have the theme of social class and inequality. The novel is set in Victorian England, a time period when social class and inequality were widespread. Jane is a poor and uneducated woman who is constantly reminded of her place in society. She is often treated as a servant by the wealthy families she works for, and she faces prejudice and discrimination because of her lack of status. However, Jane's intelligence and determination allow her to overcome these obstacles, and she eventually finds happiness and fulfillment despite the constraints placed on her by society. And finally, we have the theme of religion and morality. Religion is an important theme in Jane Eyre, and it is often used to justify the actions of the characters. Jane is a devout Christian who believes in the importance of doing what is right, no matter what the personal cost may be. She is constantly struggling with her own sense of morality, and she often feels torn between her duty to God and her desire for love and happiness. The novel explores the complexities of religion and morality and suggests that there are often multiple perspectives on what is right and wrong. Now let's take a look at some of the writing style and language used in the novel. The novel is written in the first-person point of view, which allows the reader to experience the story through Jane's eyes. The language used in the novel is simple and straightforward, but it is also poetic and evocative. Brontë uses vivid imagery and symbolism to create a rich and immersive reading experience. For example, the character of Mr. Rochester is often associated with darkness and mystery, while the character of Jane is associated with light and innocence. This use of symbolism helps to emphasize the central themes of the novel and create a deeper understanding of the characters. Overall, Jane Eyre is a powerful and moving novel that explores universal themes of love, loss, identity, and social class. It is a story of a strong-willed woman who overcomes great adversity to find happiness and fulfillment, and it remains a beloved classic of English literature. Well, folks, that's all the time we have today. But don't worry, this won't be the last you hear from me. Next time we'll talk about another wonderful novel. Until then, keep reading and exploring the world of classic literature. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.